Okay, folks, this is John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter here, and we finally got our technical issues sorted out. Sorry about that. We are here for part four of our fraud prevention series, active defenses against double brokering. There is a new scam out. We will be covering that as part of today's portion. And so stay tuned and we will cover that. In the meantime, especially if you are new in the industry, the only way to survive here is to know your costs. You can't bid on a load unless you know whether or not you're turning a profit on it. Best way to do that is through AccuBid Pro.
Do you know your cost per mile? Have you been hitting your profit margins? Do you struggle with bidding in a way that is both profitable and competitive? Would it be worth it to have all this information right in front of you? By calculating your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro helps you stay profitable in an industry still struggling to recover. In order to calculate your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro asks you questions about your business expenses. Our goal is to help you understand what you need to keep operating in order to keep up with the game and maintain your business. Enter your origin and destination, and we show you what you should bid based on your personal cost per mile in order to be profitable, even including a more detailed breakdown of each bid. Download the app today and get your 30-day free trial of AccuBid Pro, available on the App Store and Google Play. Bid smarter, bid faster, bid better with AccuBid Pro.
So let's go ahead and get into today's part four. What most people need to understand is the difference between defenses and prevention. We're not talking about prevention in this particular case. We're talking about defending yourself from a double broker attack. It's an active measure when you have an attack ongoing. This is while you're booking loads or while you're route planning, etc. This is really what this is geared to. When we're talking about prevention, we're talking more about procedural measures, and we'll cover that in a later part. I want to say it's part 6 or part 7. We'll be dealing with those. But in the meantime, let's talk about how carriers can defend themselves from these double broker scams. First off, take a look at what kind of equipment you have. If you're running a box truck or a hot shot or a sprinter van, and you're operating off the spot market, you literally have seconds to decide whether or not you want to pursue a cargo that pops up on the boards. So you have no time whatsoever to actually screen a broker. And frankly, carriers, you need to be screening brokers just as much as they screen you. It is an absolute necessity because there are plenty of bad brokers out there and more individuals who are impersonating brokers to make them look bad. So you really need to pay attention to what you're doing. Now, what most people ask me is, John, what can a carrier do in order to evaluate whether or not a broker is a good broker? First place I look is at reviews on load boards or Google. You get into DAT. DAT is what I use the most. If you get into DAT, you can go into the directory and you can look at the reviews for every broker. Personally, if they have all 5 stars and dozens of reviews, I'm skeptical. Are they all planted or whatnot? Because no one is perfect. If there's a healthy mix of good and bad reviews, I'm usually thumbs up at that point. But that's just me. Another good way is to subscribe to a screening service. And I know carriers, you don't have a lot of money. I get that. But screening services can be extremely valuable. Some of the things that we recommend, Carrier OK is a good one, fairly inexpensive, and gives you the same level of information that brokers typically get from a variety of screening services that they have access to. Also, there is Freight Validate. I'm a huge supporter of Freight Validate. Not only do brokers have access to it, carriers, you need to have access to it as well. And what it tells you is whether or not a broker or a carrier is meeting federal and state requirements to maintain their authority. Because a huge surprise here, over 10% of carriers and brokers that are currently active do not do not meet the requirements to maintain an active authority. So more coming on that because FMCSA is going to start cracking down. But that's another topic for another day. Credit checks for brokers are another good thing. Pay attention to the credit checks. When a broker is starting to have financial issues, they can be tempted to do bad things. So it is important to pay attention to what's going on. Now on the screen, I have a broker summary that as it appears on DAT. Of course, I knocked out the stuff that helps identify the brokers. But one of the things you will note is their credit score is fairly good. It's a 97, days to pay are 18. That's usually a mark of a decent broker, but that's not the only thing that I look at. This is a sample screen from Carrier OK, and this does not come up very good. So what I'll do is I'll make sure I get an image of this in the comments for people to look at. But one of the things to note about this particular broker that I pulled up in Carrier OK, they actually show what their bond insurance is. Their bond actually has $7 million in coverage. I like seeing brokers that have more than the minimum in coverage. It just makes things work a lot better, and it says that they know that they are moving a lot of freight and they know they need that level of protection. You're always going to see an occasional negative on the right-hand side of that list, but evaluate whether or not that negative is a showstopper for you. So let's take a look at these individual defenses. First off, scrutinize the rate confirmation, guys. If you are looking at a broker and you're trying to figure out whether or not they're playing you for a fool, take a look at that rate confirmation. That rate confirmation is going to have giveaway options in there. You know, is it a bad email address? Is the font funny looking? Seriously, when you pull it out and you open it up, if something looks off, then you need to evaluate that better. And one of the best ways to do that is if it's a medium or a large broker, I would call the corporate office for that brokerage. I would want to get a hold of somebody who can take a look at the load number and verify the lane and verify that I am actually the carrier on that lane before I ever go and pick up. You don't want to get caught with your pants around your ankles on this one. Okay. Now, if you're talking about a small broker, well, you can't exactly verify the broker if the only person you can call to do a verification is the guy you booked the load with. It doesn't quite work that well. This is one of those rare cases where it's acceptable to call a shipper. I would call the shipper and I would say, hey, who is the freight broker for this load? Be very careful. And we've said this before, but I have to keep saying this. Do not talk money. If you talk money, you're now crossing into that gray area known as back solicitation. You do not want to be accused of that. So if you're going to call the shipper to verify a broker, be very clear and ask to make sure who the freight broker for the load is, and it is the same person that you are booking with. Some of the other things you need to do is to scrutinize your BOL. Make sure that the details that are on the BOL match the rate confirmation. If they don't, you should be asking questions. Another thing you need to do is sign your BOLs. And I would sign it in an ink color different than what the BOL is printed on. You know, most BOLs are printed in black. So I used to carry around a blue pen or a red pen for signing BOLs. Now, why does this matter? Scammers will often use photocopies or scanned copies of BOLs to forge signatures and to try to get paid on your loads. So what I do is I use a colored stamp or a colored pen to sign all BOLs at the shipper. So that the BOL copy or the shipper's copy shows it is a colored stamp, has my signature on it in a different color ink. So the broker knows exactly what's going on. If the broker gets back a black and white signature, well, then there could be something funny going on. It forces them. So that's one of the things that I do. Make sure you sign those BOLs. It is important that you do it. And that's every copy, not just the copy that stays with the shipper. Sign every copy. Some of the other things that you need to worry about. If it is one of the original double brokering scams, what I call the skim off the top or the too good to be true scam, if you figure that out, if you figure out it's a double brokered load before you pick up, just don't pick up the load. Cancel the load. Call the broker. Be courteous. Call the broker. Cancel the load. Say, hey, look, something's come up. Something doesn't look right on this. We don't trust this. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Please recover the load, and walk the hell away. Okay. Now, if you learn it when you're in transit, now you've got some other issues. What I would do is I would pull over and then I would try to figure out who the real broker is. Get help. By all means, please get help. Do not try to do this stuff alone, because one of the mistakes that some people will try to do is they will then try to hold the load, and the broker may think that you're holding it hostage. You don't want to hold it hostage. As soon as you find out who the real broker is and where the load is really supposed to go to, you need to start moving in that direction. You can always negotiate with the real broker along the way to make sure that you're getting a fair rate, but keep moving. You have no reason to hold the cargo. The only possible legal reason for holding cargo hostage is if you do not have a reasonable expectation of getting paid. If you've got a valid rate confirmation in your hand, you have a valid expectation of payment. Therefore, do not hold the load. This modern day with technology, there is no reason to hold a load. You can continue to negotiate with a broker even after you deliver, but don't hold the load. If you discover it after delivery, then it becomes a real problem, because odds are the scammer may have already been paid. So it's best to get help to try to sort through those kinds of situations. Now, if you're going through an impersonated broker or impersonated, covered these in our last segment in part 3, then you need to make sure that you're watching your tail, because in most cases you're in the middle of a cargo theft type situation. If you figure it out before you pick up, cancel the load, get away from it. If you can figure out who the real broker is, let them know and warn them, because the real broker is clearly not doing their job and they're about to be out a lot of money. And trust me, they will be very happy if you gave them that warning. If you figure it out in transit, a lot of times this could be a blind shipment or a power only move or something along those lines. You figure out something's not right. Again, pull over, ask for help, figure out what's going on before you proceed, if at all possible. Because again, if you go and you deliver it, you may be in a situation where you're not going to get paid. And then you're going to need to call me to figure out, hey, John, how the hell do I ever get paid? And that's the kind of thing that I help people do. But unfortunately, it costs money to do that. It's one of the few things I actually do charge for. Now, here is the new scam I mentioned about at the top of the program. Impersonated owner operators. We just became aware of this a couple of days ago, thanks to a post from OTR Solutions. What is happening is a company who poses as a reputable broker, or an individual posing as a reputable broker, contacts you, the carrier, and says, hey, I've got a guy who needs to lease on to a good carrier. We want him to lease on to you, and we'll keep him loaded and keep him running for you. Well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. You know, you bring somebody on, they got a broker who wants to keep giving them freight. Hey, you know, that sounds good. Here's the rub. The broker and the owner operator are together. And if they're scamming, you don't know whether or not something's going on. So here's how the scam works. You have this individual pushing this owner operator on the carrier. Carrier signs up the owner operator. Owner operator starts getting loads from the broker who referred them. Well, the broker and the owner operator, again, they're scammers. So there's no loads actually moving. It is just paperwork. Literally, it is just paperwork. So you're going to get a piece of paper saying the load was delivered. You're going to get rate confirmations. You're going to submit everything to your factoring company. And you can even hear, my dog hates this. You get the stuff submitted to the factoring company. Factoring company pays you. Well, 30 days go by and the factoring company hasn't gotten their money yet, or the brokerage who's being impersonated through all this says, hey, wait a minute, that's not one of our loads, so we can't pay. Well, then, Mr. Carrier, you're already paying your owner operator, and factoring company's now coming back to you to take money back from you because they're not getting paid by the broker that they think is doing the load, but hey, it turns out to be a scam. So this scam is specifically designed to ruin carriers and steal your money. This is absolutely ingenious. It was just discovered very recently. There's more to come about this. I will be doing more videos about this. In fact, my live show on Monday is going to include a factoring company that's going through this, and they're going to be talking about their experience. So there's more to come on this very thing. If you are going to be working with an owner operator, huge recommendation here, make sure you know your business partners and vet them. Don't just sit there and say, oh, it's a guy who introduced himself to me on the internet. Look, if you're going to be going into business together, you really need to meet in person. You need to look them in the eye. You need to get a better feel for these individuals, okay? And don't just trust what's going on the internet, because you and I both know, just because somebody sits there and says they're a gorgeous blonde and they want to get to know you, it's probably somebody else who's not gorgeous, not blonde, and possibly not even female, and trying to exploit you. So pay attention, defend yourselves, verify the individual. If they say they're with a specific brokerage, a good sized brokerage, call the brokerage and ask whether or not they have somebody by that name that works there. I mean, there are simple things that you can do to vet these people, and you can catch them before you become a victim. And that's the key here. Don't become a victim. Figure it out ahead of time. Brokers, there are defenses out there for you too. And those defenses are usually in the form of your compliance departments. Now, I don't necessarily agree with what compliance departments do. Compliance departments have taken away the traditional gut instinct of a broker in trying to develop relationships with carriers, and have replaced it with robotic requirements that are unwaverable in most cases. So it's critical to really evaluate your requirements thoroughly from compliance departments to make sure that you're doing the right thing to mitigate your risk. What you're seeing these days is that these compliance departments, which really only started popping up in the last few years in most cases, instead of being staffed by brokers who know the industry, they're being staffed by risk managers and attorneys who only care about the regulation. Now, regulation's good, regulation's important, but as we all know in this industry, relationships are also important. That's one touch compliance departments don't tend to have these days. So they're drawing data from Safer, MCMIS, and other sources. You know, if they're pulling data from Carrier 411 or Highway, those data sources are pulling information from MCMIS. So if information is delayed from updating or whatnot, they have no control over getting that information updated. I'll give you an example. MCMIS, which is the safety system for FMCSA. If you get a inspection done, and that inspection is not submitted by the state DOT that issued the inspection report by a certain date, you will not get that update in MCMIS, thus translating over into RMIS and all these other systems. You won't get that for as long as a month and a half, because MCMIS only updates once a month on the 10th or 12th of every. So if the information is not submitted in a timely manner, you may be waiting a month and a half to see that update show up in Highway. I'm dealing with that with one of my carriers right now, and it sucks trying to book them something, even though I know they have an inspection, a level 1. And people are still saying, no, they don't, at least not in Carrier 411. Well, you're right, because MCMIS hasn't updated it yet. Even my dog is upset about this whole situation. You got to love it. It's okay, Violet. We're taking care of it. So since 2022, brokers are ditching the relationships and are focusing on what compliance is doing. All the initial screenings that they do usually involve Carrier 411, Carrier Assure, or one of those other screening systems, and that tends to drive that discussion. You know, guys, be real careful when you're using these systems because they're not 100% accurate. They are not always representative of what's going on because they use predictive analytics. Okay, huge plug in here for Freight Validate. Freight Validate focuses solely on the regulation and whether or not somebody meets all the requirements for state and federal maintenance of their authority. So as long as you're paying attention with Freight Validate, you're in a lot better space than just focusing on Carrier 411. Just my opinion, take that for what it is, because Freight Validate is not a sponsor of ours. We just truly believe in them. So what brokers tend to have now is a layered defense. They focus on what the screening services provide. That's your RMIS, that's MCP, that's highway. We've all seen these as dispatchers and carriers. We filled out these forms so many times, and as brokers change from one platform to another, you got to do another setup. How many brokers have I had to do new setups with just because they went from RMIS to highway in this last few months? It's crazy. Anyway, but broker compliance does have some ability to override certain things, but not everything. So carriers, be patient. When a broker tells you they can't work with you, but they used to work with you in the past, there's something going on you probably don't know about. They don't have to tell you what it is, I'm sorry to say, but be patient. Now, once a broker does clear a carrier for use, you need to expect certain things to happen these days because brokers, they have really been refining their defenses for quite some time. They're going to want your truck and driver information. That's pretty standard. They're going to want a little more, though. They may want pictures of the truck. They may want a picture of the VIN and the signage as well. You know, again, this is becoming standard stuff. And I know it's tedious. I know it's a pain in the ass. But carriers, we need to do it. We got to work. We got to eat. And if this is what it takes to make a broker feel comfortable working with us, then be transparent and do what they ask. Tracking is also a big requirement that we're seeing on just about every load these days. You know, tracking is so important to brokers. I'm at the point where for all of my carriers, I have my own tracking as well. I use Life 360. It's free. I can segregate all of my carriers into their own MCs, and I can see where they're at, where they're going, and I have a 24-hour history of where they've been, all for free. Okay, so Life 360, very good for dispatchers and carriers to use. It's very helpful, okay? Especially for dispatchers if you don't have access to the carrier's ELD for GPS tracking. Checking for proper BOL construction is important for brokers. Guys, if you're a broker and you're out there, you need to make sure that your name appears somewhere on the BOL. It should appear in the third party section. It should not be as the carrier because you don't take physical possession of the cargo. However, as an industry, it is accepted that brokers have their name in the carrier section. What's most important is that brokers, your name needs to appear on that BOL somewhere. All right, guys, there's a lot going on in this industry when it comes to double brokering. There's a lot of different techniques and defenses out there depending on the situation that you are in. If you ever have any questions regarding this, feel free to contact me. I am the Double Broker Bounty Hunter. Hit me up at jcantera@vigilanttransport.com, or you can call me. My phone number is on the screen. I'm happy to talk to anybody about helping them shore up their defenses, carrier or broker, because guys, we're both under attack. The whole industry is under attack, and we need to make sure that we're doing our best to protect each other, because it's not carriers versus brokers. It can't be. It's all of us against the scammers. And the sooner we unite against the scammers, the sooner we'll be able to drive them out of our industry and protect the industry that we love and care about. So take care of yourselves, stay safe out there. And whatever you do, you know what I'm going to say. Don't let scammers take you for a ride. We'll see you on our next live on Monday, 1 p.m. Central Time. Don't miss it. Have a good one, folks.